let me just tell you, I can understand how sometimes things get out of control and some things people could not foresee. I'm gonna give you a choice. These are your choices. There are no other choices. Don't ask for any other choice. This is your only choice.
This case spirals fast. What starts as a street argument turns into a firearm being pulled and someone getting shot. Now the defendant says he was provoked, claims fear, claims confusion, but the evidence tells a very different story. Witnesses say he chased, escalated, and pulled the gun first. And now, he's standing in front of a judge who's not buying excuses, only choices. Because in this courtroom, it's simple. Your decisions don't disappear. They follow you straight to sentencing.
Duty on striking fixture highway landscape. There's always something where I have to look up. I'm not up to date on misdemeanor. All the
It's a
misdemeanors.
B.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So are we here today for sentencing?
Yes, Judge.
Excuse me, on Samansky, I don't have any of the paperwork.
You want to look at the,
It's for sentencing. Is there any objections to me ruining it?
no. I figured you already had.
No, I usually don't do that until attorneys have a chance to review everything and then they can tell me whether they object to me.
No, we
reviewing
don't
it or not.
object. We didn't find anything factually incorrect.
Oh, you don't have to file stamp it because it's not a plea. It's a sentencing.
Well, I have paperwork for them.
No, I mean, I need to see what the plea agreement was reached because it's a sentencing. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you, Judge.
Thank you. All right, the court is calling 2025 CR 0064220 State versus Corbin Samansky. Can I have parties announced?
Wait for the state.
Charles Buck and Clint Glennie for the defendant.
All right, and are you Mr. Samansky?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you entered a plea on, it looks like January 13th, according to your plea bargaining agreement. State is opposed to your application. There's a $2,000 fine, cap of 6 years in the prison, and restitution to the complainant. Have both parties had a chance to review the PSI report and TAP evaluation?
Yes, Your Honor, and no objections for the state.
We have reviewed the same and have no objections.
All right, are there any witnesses? State?
No witnesses, just argument, Your Honor.
No witnesses, just discussion.
Oh, a discussion? All right.
We don't want to argue with anybody.
Yeah, there's no argument, just a discussion. All right, then let's discuss. State, you're opposed.
I am, and so we're asking that you deny the application, Your Honor, and that's based on some of the things that are contained within stipulations. And so in reviewing the defendant's PSI, what was reported to the PSI officer is that he was not under the influence of alcohol. He was a designated driver on the day of the offense, and that the reason that he became engaged in this altercation that was ongoing is because a member of his party engaged in a verbal altercation with the complainant in this case. And then what is reported is that the complainant then dropped the driver's side mirror of the vehicle that the defendant was operating. And then at this point, the defendant grabbed the firearm and began holding it. And then he reported that the complainant walked over to the vehicle again. And that's when he fired the firearm and struck the complainant and he stopped him. And if we look at the evidence that was stipulated to, that rendition is in stark contrast to what was reported by witnesses that were present that stated that they were crossing the street when the defendant began calling out to them, making offensive statements to them, and then followed them in his motor vehicle. And then at that time, that is when the person, or the passenger in the defendant's vehicle, got out of the vehicle and engaged in the verbal dispute with the complainant. And it's stated and stipulated to evidence that the complainant attempted to cross the street when the defendant cut them off in the truck and brandished his firearm. And then there is this regarding the truck that the complainant did strike the truck, and then that is when the defendant shot at the complainant. And so the state's position is that no deadly force was exhibited against the defendant, and that he was not justified in using force, and that the force that he used was unreasonable and exceeded the scope needed if he's stating that he was in fear, like what he stated to the case officer.
All right, defense.
Judge, yes, yes, that is what's in the stipulated evidence, and we pled no contest to that evidence. I think what the court knows from having been in this position for a long time is there's usually a lot more to a story, and I believe that when you look at what the evidence says and what my client said in the PSI, I think that kind of gives you a complete picture of what was going on. It all started from an argument between my client's girlfriend and the defendant and the group of people the defendant was with. It was two groups of people, which escalated to the point to where there was a almost physical altercation between another gentleman who was with my client and the defendant. And at that time, the defendant, kind of addressed the situation. The complainant, as Ms. Galloway spoke of, approaches the vehicle. There's discussions, there's some types of physical contact. At which point my client eventually then does,
When you
commits the
say
crime.
physical contact, you mean
The
physical
striking of-
contact with this
Well,
vehicle?
my client, as the PSI reflects, that the defendant was struck at some point or by the complainant. And when Ms. Galloway talks about the complainant striking first the mirror of the defendant's vehicle, and then the second time when the defendant then strikes the rear of my client's vehicle. But there was not an actual fight, if you will, between my client and the defendant, other than the verbal discussions, and then the allegation my client makes that there was some contact between the defendant and my client, and then, as Ms. Galloway pointed out, between the defendant vehicle and the complainant multiple times. But unfortunately, this led to the event that occurred, and we're certainly not here. Like I said, we've pled no contest. We're accepting responsibility for what happened. But just as the court is aware, there's always more to the story, if you will. It's not just a situation where unprovoked my client just acted out. But I also want to address, if I may, that this allowed, or it gave my client some clarity and helped turn around what had been a difficult situation for him. Since the court was generous enough to reset this PSI to allow him to complete the inpatient program at Lifetime Recovery. And I've shown to Ms. Galloway the certificate of that. He got out, he did the 2 months inpatient of Lifetime Recovery, and I have that for the court if the court wants to see it.
Any objection?
So we want the court to certainly know that my client understands the direness of the situation, but also understands that even though he wasn't drinking that night, the court can see from the PSI that he has an issue with drinking, and that needed to be addressed. And that also helped some other situations that he'd struggled with early in life that have now been addressed through his counseling and work with Lifetime Recovery. So we dealt with not only the alcohol issue, but also some mental health issues that needed to be addressed. So he, in a very sad but strange way, this kind of helped him realize, we got to make some changes. So as the court is aware, he took it upon himself to be proactive and do these things in an attempt to show the court he takes this seriously and he understands the gravity of the situation. Now certainly, as the court said, it's a cap of 6 opposed. We're asking the court to consider and grant his application for deferred adjudication. We had lengthy discussions. You can see how many times the plea was reset because we discussed with our client over and over the easy way out, if you will. We can get you a couple of years, you can be done and put this thing behind you. He didn't want the easy way out. He wants the hard way out. He wants to prove to the court, to the family of the complainant, to his mom and dad, who are also present in the courtroom, that he's better than the Corbin Szymanski that was seen on that night. And we believe that the deferred adjudication will, one, in the PSI, there talks about unpaid restitution. That's certainly something that can be addressed, and I expect would be addressed if the court was to consider his application for deferred adjudication. And furthermore, we understand that the court can place him on deferred with very intensive conditions, and I certainly expect that the court would, if the court was to give him this chance. We believe the totality of the circumstances, when you look at everything, he's a great candidate for deferred adjudication. I think that he would prosper. I think he'll show the court that he was worthy of the opportunity. I know from dealing with Mr. Szymanski personally, he certainly understands the gravity of the situation. If he could go back to that night and not have interjected himself into other people's problems, he would love that opportunity, but we can't go back. So all we can do is go forward, and we're hoping that in going forward, he can get the deferred adjudication. As you can see, he doesn't have any criminal history prior to this. He had and still has a very good job that will allow him to assist with this restitution that the complainant certainly is entitled to. I think he's an excellent candidate. I'm asking the court to consider his application for deferred adjudication.
Okay, I don't know why people think that weapons solve problems. That's what I'm trying to understand. People are in an argument, somebody pulls a gun, nobody else has a gun. What's the point?
That created the problem.
You'll raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can lower your hand, state your name for the record.
Corbin Szymanski. I was being followed for 2 blocks. Downtown where that red statue is, you have to take a UE to get out there.
So let me ask you this question. If somebody's following you, they don't have a gun, and you have a gun, do you think it's okay to fire at them? That's the question. Again, I don't understand why everybody wants to have a gun. Nobody takes classes on guns. People just pull them randomly. It's sort of like, I took a lot of psychology courses. I should have double majored, but I did it because I took political science and you have all these electives. I said, let me take psychology. It may come in handy. And what I've discovered in my time and everything that I've viewed in this life that I have, one, when people are with groups of people and somebody does something stupid, then everybody jumps in because it's a group of people. And sometimes when you're by yourself, you would not have made the choices you made. The other thing that I've discovered is when somebody has a weapon, they always want to pull it. So I'm just trying to get into your psyche to understand what you think of this whole incident.
Very scarred from it. I actually still have nightmares from it. I don't ever want to touch a weapon.
Nightmares about what?
That night, and the fact that I hurt somebody and that I hurt somebody very badly.
Do you have weapons at your home?
No, ma'am. Not, I have pocket knives for work. That's it.
Mhm. And where do you work and what do you do?
Native American contracting, doing ironwork.
And how long you been working there?
Since January, I was working at GSI, but it's a mountain stabilization company. And with the whole court stuff, they want me to come back, but I can't because I obviously have appointments in court and it's an out-of-state job.
Okay,
Judge, for whatever it's worth, I want to point out that that he did remain at the location when the police got there, he cooperated and complied with all their requests. I didn't point that out earlier. I wanted to make sure that was pointed out.
all right. Anything from the state?
Just- Okay, Mr. Samansky, so you stated that you all were on Market Street by that red statue with the roundabout, is that correct?
Passing the red statue, we were at the first light, I believe. It was a long time ago. We were at the first light, and then an old friend that I don't even associate with anymore was saying something to him on the sidewalk. And then he comes to the truck, was beating on the truck, and then gets into an altercation with my friend. And then comes over to my side of the truck because I was telling him to leave us alone, and kept.
All right, and I'm so sorry, just for my clarification, when you say altercation, what do you mean by altercation? Verbal, physical?
Verbal at the moment until he came, because I was telling him to leave us alone. He told me to shut up and came over and punched me, and then he was talking, running his mouth outside of the truck, like just provoking and provoking and provoking.
I'm sorry, did you say he punched you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm sorry for interrupting I'm just trying to understand what he's saying.
So I kind of want to back up a little bit because you stated that the complainants were following you, is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so at this time, they're walking, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
They don't have any deadly weapons, do they? Okay, and you're in a motor vehicle, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the motor vehicle that you're in is pretty big motor vehicle, right? It's a big truck, right?
Yes.
And so what some witnesses say is that they were attempting to cross the street and you became angry and that you're the one that started calling them names. So you're saying that's not true?
I put this on my life. I'm not the one that provoked this situation to begin with at all.
So your testimony is that that was your friend that was engaging in a verbal altercation with the complainants and calling them names?
Yes, and he actually ran from the scene.
And I'm not disputing, you did say you were cooperative with the police officers. I'm not disputing that. I'm just trying to clarify what occurred that night, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And so then when the complainant approaches the truck that you're driving, at that point, did you become angry and that's why you produced your weapon or what?
I was frustrated because the girlfriend was standing in front of the truck. He was standing on the side. We did drive up probably 20 feet. We were in the turn lane and they were following us, screaming at us. The only reason I didn't drive off from the scene is because my friend was out of the truck and I didn't want to leave my friend downtown.
All right, and I'm sorry, is there something going on outside? All right, thank you. And I'm sorry, the friend that you're saying you didn't want to leave, is that the friend who ended up leaving?
He ended up leaving him, yes.
Okay. All right, is there anything else?
Nothing further, Judge.
All right. Let me just tell you, I can understand how sometimes things get out of control and some things people could not foresee. I'm gonna give you a choice. These are your choices. There are no other choices. Don't ask for any other choice. This is your only choice. One, I can grant your application for deferred adjudication. but you are going to do jail time as a condition or 2. I won't grant your I will not grant your application, and I'll sentence you to 2 years in the prison. Do you need to speak to your attorneys?
I'll have to defer to adjudication.
You all want to?
No, Judge, we addressed the possibility of this situation and we discussed all the pros and cons, and he absolutely, as I stated earlier, wants to prove to the court, to the complainant, to his parents, that he's not that person and he's worthy of this opportunity.
All right.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I did find out last night that my,
That he may have a child on the way. That's
Okay. All right. Here's the thing about children on the way. I always tell people, if you have situations that are going on in your life where you have no control over the outcome in the sense that you're before the judge, I don't know why people go forth and like, I'm gonna have a child. It's like, you know, you could be going to prison. All right. So first off, Norma, I need a reset date for restitution hearing. And state how much time you need.
Judge, so plus 45 days, so that is something that I wanted to address. We have got the complainant in communication with the Crime Victim Compensation Fund. However, it's my understanding that they did not cover the totality of the medical bill. And so at this time, we're in communication with Beyonce to try to obtain certified copies of the what's remaining of the medical.
All right, Ms. Ferguson,
Yeah.
recall this for 60 days for a restitution hearing. And on the record, because it's going to be a long date, does anyone have any objection to recalling this for a restitution hearing in 60 days?
no.
All right, what date? So June 11th will be your restitution hearing date. This is what the court is going to do in this case. The court is going to sentence you to 8 years deferred adjudication. There's an affirmative finding of a deadly weapon. $2,000 fine. That will be probated. 200 hours of community service restitution. I'm going to order anger management. Once anger management is completed, 100 hours of the community service restitution will be deemed satisfied. Probation, is there any other class that he would need? All right. There's going to be regular reporting by Zoom or in person, regular random UAs or the patch. Proof of employment within 45 days of release. No employment as a home health care provider or with minors. Oh, Vashon, he's gonna need parenting classes since he has a baby on the way. The remaining 100 hours will be deemed satisfied upon completion of parenting classes. And Ms. Abrams, if you'll note in your file that he has previously completed lifetime recovery, there's going to be field visits 1 time per month for 6 months. And there's to be restitution, if any, and no contact with Devin Winkler Santana. There's to be no possession of firearms. Probation, anything else? All right, let's do the cognitive behavioral course. All right, and there's to be 60 days in the Bear County Jail as a condition of probation. Is there anything else you need from the court?
No.
All right. Did you review the document entitled Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Rights to Appeal with your attorney? Did you understand it and sign it?
Say yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Because it's a plea bargain agreement, because I followed your plea bargain agreement, and because you waive your right to appeal, you do not have the court's permission to appeal. All right, we can go off the record. Here's the thing. You need to make sure that you complete everything and you do everything appropriately. You understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, good luck to you.
The judge gives him a lifeline, but it's a heavy one. 8 years deferred, strict conditions, and jail time included. This isn't mercy, it's controlled accountability. One mistake, and he's facing real prison time. So here's the question. Was this a second chance, or just a delayed consequence? Do you think the judge made the right call, or did he let him off too easy? Comment below, hit like, and subscribe for more real courtroom breakdowns.